Hello everyone. Have you ever came across a curiosity? How well can ChatGPT perform on the SAT? You may wonder, can ChatGPT score a perfect score? Well, let's test it out using GPT 5.1. Now I will explain to you why ChatGPT scored a 1550 instead of a 1600 and how to close the gap. In other words, I'll explain the four mistakes that ChatGPT made that prevented it from scoring a perfect score and how you can get them right.
Let's tackle ChatGPT's first mistake. I'm going to introduce a very simple strategy to decipher seemingly tough problems. In 2010, Time is in the Past, archaeologist Noel Hidalgo-Tan's subject was visiting verb 12th century Angkor Wat temple object. After the connection, with the help of digital imaging techniques, which is attached to the sentence and no verb, he, subject, discovered verb. Again, it corresponds to the time at the start. To be part of, that's just a phrase starting with to, and it has no effect on the sentence. Subject, verb, subject, verb. We need to connect two sentences. Let's look at A. Rule number 1. A comma is not strong enough to glue two complete sentences together. If you're picking A, you're creating a classic comma splice. Option B, honestly, it makes the exact same mistake, except that it moves the comma to a different spot. Here, to be specific. Also, comma splice. Now, C is a very common trap on the SAT. You can't just use a conjunction like so to join two sentences unless you put a comma before it. Since there's no comma here, this is technically a run-on sentence. And that leaves us with D. This is our correct answer because a period perfectly separates two complete independent thoughts. Let's tackle ChatGPT's second mistake. I'm going to continue to use the method that we used last time. On July 23, 1854 is the time. A clipper ship subject called, well, now someone might be tempted to say called is a verb in the past tense, and it matches the time perfect. Well, this couldn't be further from the truth. Called here is actually a past participle, and it denotes passive voice. It's not a verb. Think about it. The clipper ship is being called something, and being called isn't an action that the clipper ship actively takes. The past participle is commonly mistaken as the past tense verb. All right, let's move on. Entered, verb, San Francisco Bay, object. After the connection, having left New York Harbor, and all the rest of this until the last comma of the sentence. So all of this, it's just a verb ing phrase that modifies the subject, the celebrated ship. Set, verb, a record, object. That would stand for 135 years is a restrictive clause. That is simply attached to the sentence and starts with that. Alright, two complete sentences, SVSV. A same common trap alone conjunction can't be used to join two sentences together unless you have a comma before it. Without a comma, this is just a run-on sentence. B, the period separates two sentences perfectly. This is the correct answer. C, similar to the comma cannot connect two sentences rule mentioned earlier. Again, the classic comma splice is created. And D, this option would be taking the comma to just before the celebrated ship, this comma over here. And this would not work. You would also have a comma splice. Let's tackle ChatGPT's third mistake. This problem is slightly more difficult, but I'll show the best path to the solution. The Arctic Alpine Botanic Garden all the way to the Rio de Janeiro in Brazil is the subject. Are verb, two of many botanical gardens around the world. This is interesting, but this is just a restrictive appositive. And as a reminder, an appositive is just a phrase that rephrases some noun that precedes it and dedicates to, completes the verb. Now we notice a pattern: growing diverse plant species, then fostering scientific research, and finally educating the public about plant conservation. This hints to us this might be a list. As a reminder, semicolons have two purposes. They are used for separating two complete sentences or separating three items in a list. Just like this. We confirm this thinking by noting that the phrase "and educating the public about plant conservation" is not a sentence. It does not have a verb. So we rule out the first possibility. Thus, this is just a list, and there should be a second semicolon just around the blank. That means separating the first two items in the list, because there are two semicolons for three items and only one is used so far. Looking at the answer choices now, we directly eliminate A and D because they have no semicolons. For B and C, we look at the meaning. Both native and non-native clearly belongs to the diverse plant species item, the first item, and not in the fostering scientific research item. So they should be grouped together. And the semicolon should not separate them. So B is correct and C is not. Hence the answer is just B. Finally, ChatGPT's last mistake is the final problem on the hard module of the math test. So let's take a look at how we can beat this problem. First, let's take a look at the problem statement. It has the vertex 9, -14 and intersects the x-axis at 2 points. In order to make life a little easy for ourselves, why don't we try to visualize things? 9 and -14. You have a point. And it intersects at 2 points, so it must look something like this. Yeah, something like this, with two intersections with the x-axis. And if you recall a parabola with the opening upwards, this is going to be telling us that a is larger than 0. And this is a condition that will help guide us into thinking about where we should move ahead when we're solving this problem. Now, we have asking for a plus b plus c. We look at the answer. It is the answer choices, not the blank. So highly likely, we can't actually find each of A, B, and C. And we will see why right now. The number of equations that you can list out is only 2, because the first one is obvious. You plug in the points, 9, negative 14, into the function. This is easy because the vertex has to be on the parabola itself. And the second is that negative b over 2a is equal to 9. And that's because that if you recall the line of symmetry formula, this x equals 9 is just a line of symmetry, and the formula for the line of symmetry is just negative b over 2a. Now, we continue our simplification. Knowing that we cannot figure out each of A, B, and C, now my advice would be to try to isolate A plus B plus C and to simplify and move all of the other components to the other side of the equation. Well, what do I mean by that? So just like this. And move 80A plus 8B to the other side of the equation. Now, we're given that A is greater than 0, so why don't we just express this entire right side using A? And you end up like this. And we know that A is greater than 0. Thus, A plus B plus C must be greater than negative 14. And if we scroll back to the answer choices, the only answer choice that satisfies this is D, negative 12.
Everyone, thank you for watching the video. If you have any feedback, please let me know down below in the comment section, and stay tuned for my second episode on the 1600 human vs AI.